You should receive a big reward if you can survive this challenge for just 1 year. But here's the catch. You have to survive the year 536 AD, the worst year to be alive in all of human history. You think you're tough? You think your wilderness survival videos prepared you? You think because you watched every apocalypse movie you'd make it? You're wrong. By the end of this video, I'm going to prove to you that everything you think you know about survival is completely useless. Because what happened in 536 AD wasn't just a disaster, it was the year the sun disappeared, the year the world froze, the year that ended civilization as they knew it. And here's the terrifying part. It could happen again. Right now. Tomorrow. So buckle up, because we're about to do something insane. We're going to put you, yes, you watching this, into the year 536 AD, and we're going to see if you'd actually survive. And I'm telling you right now, the odds are not in your favor. This is the ultimate survival challenge. This is 536 AD, and this is how you die. Let's set the scene. It's March 536 AD. You wake up on your small farm somewhere in Europe. Maybe you're in Italy, maybe Gaul, maybe Britain. Doesn't matter. You're about to experience the same nightmare everyone on half the planet is about to face. You walk outside, and something is wrong. The sun is up. You know it is, but you can't really see it. There's this thick, dense fog covering everything. Not a morning mist, not regular clouds. This is different. This is wrong. A Roman historian named Procopius, one of the smartest guys of his time, wrote this exact quote. For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the sun in eclipse for the whole year. Read that again. The whole year. The sun gave light without brightness. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like someone turned down the brightness settings on planet Earth. And here's the thing. You don't know why. You don't know what's happening. You don't have scientists on TV explaining it. You don't have the internet. All you know is the sky just broke. Now here's what actually happened. Somewhere, scientists think it was in Iceland, or possibly 3 volcanoes erupting at once, a massive volcanic eruption occurred. We're talking one of the biggest in human history. It pumped billions upon billions of tons of sulfate aerosols into the atmosphere. Think of it like this. Imagine taking a massive blanket and wrapping it around the entire Earth. That's what this volcanic ash did. It formed a layer in the stratosphere that blocked out the sun. Not completely, but enough. Enough to break the climate. This is called a volcanic winter. And it's not just a fancy term, it's a death sentence. Because when the sun's energy can't reach Earth properly, temperatures drop. And when temperatures drop during growing season, crops die. But you don't know any of this yet. It's still March. You're confused, sure, but you're not panicking. Not yet. You think, okay, weird fog. It'll pass. It doesn't pass. Days go by, weeks go by, months go by, and the fog stays. The dimness stays. The cold stays. Now it's April. Now it's May. Your crops should be growing. They're not. The temperature is all wrong. In Europe, summer temperatures dropped by 2.5 degrees Celsius. You're thinking, that's nothing. That's barely noticeable. Wrong. That's everything. Because that 2.5 degrees is the difference between your wheat growing and your wheat dying. It's the difference between your harvest and your starvation. It's the difference between life and death. June arrives. It's supposed to be summer. It's supposed to be warm. But you're cold. You're wearing extra layers. Your neighbors are muttering prayers. The priests are saying this is God's punishment. Everyone has theories. No one has answers. July. The crops are dying. Definitely dying now. You can see it. Brown where there should be green. Withered where there should be growth. You're starting to panic, but you're not alone. Everyone is panicking. August. It's snowing. In China, contemporary records tell us it snowed in August. August, the middle of summer, snow. This isn't just Europe's problem. This isn't just Asia's problem. This is a global catastrophe. The volcanic aerosols spread through the atmosphere across the entire northern hemisphere and beyond. Half the world is freezing. Half the world's crops are failing. And here's your first survival challenge. What do? You can't just go hunting. The animals are starving too. Their food sources are gone. You can't just forage for berries. Nothing's growing. You can't just fish. The fish populations are crashing because the aquatic ecosystems are collapsing. Your modern survival knowledge, everything you learned from YouTube videos and survival shows, is useless. Because those skills assume nature is working. They assume the ecosystem is functional. They assume there's something to hunt, something to gather, something to eat. But nature isn't working. The sun is gone, and everything is dying. So what's your move, survivalist? What's your play? Okay. Let's say you made it through spring and summer. Let's say you rationed what little food you had stored. Let's say you got lucky and had some grain saved from last year's harvest. You're weak, you're hungry, but you're alive. It's now September. Harvest time. Except there's nothing to harvest. The fields are barren. The wheat that should be golden and ready, dead, brown, useless. The barley, gone. The vegetables? Rotted or never grew in the first place. You walk through your field, the field your family has worked for generations, and there's nothing. All that work, all that hope, all that prayer, for nothing. This is recorded in the Irish annals as the failure of bread from the years 536 to 539. The failure of bread. Think about what that means. Bread was life. Bread was the foundation of every meal. Bread was how you survived. And now? There's no bread. There's no grain to make bread. There's nothing. This isn't just your farm. This isn't just your village. This is everywhere. All across Europe. All across Asia. All across the Middle East. Simultaneous catastrophic crop failure. Historical records from China describe the same thing. Records from the Byzantine Empire describe the same thing. Records from Scandinavia describe the same thing. Everyone, everywhere, all at once, is starving. Now here comes the really brutal survival question. You have one bag of grain left. One bag. That's maybe enough to keep you and your immediate family alive for, let's say, 2 months if you're really careful. Your neighbor, a guy you've known your entire life whose kids played with your kids, he comes to your door. He's desperate. His family is starving. His children are crying from hunger. He knows you have grain. Everyone knows who has what in a small village. He asks you for help. He begs you. What do? This is where your modern morality destroys you. You want to be a good person. You want to share. You want to help. But if you share that grain, you're splitting it between 2 families instead of 1. Now, instead of 2 months, you have 1 month. And then you're all dead. Do you share and die together? Or do you hoard and live with the guilt? This is the first brutal truth about survival in 536 AD. Kindness kills you. Morality kills you. Compassion kills you. The people who survived weren't the nicest people. They were the most ruthless. The most willing to say no to their starving neighbors. The most willing to hide their food. The most willing to defend their food. And that word, defend, that's important. Because as the famine gets worse, as the desperation grows, people stop asking nicely. They start taking. Archaeological evidence from this period shows a spike in hoarded treasure. In Scandinavia, the elites buried massive amounts of gold and silver. Why? Because in their minds the world was ending. The gods were angry. They were making offerings, yes, but they were also preparing for chaos. They were preparing for war, for raids, for violence. Because that's what happens when everyone is starving. Society breaks. The rules break. The laws break. Everything breaks. Your neighbor isn't your neighbor anymore. He's competition. He's a threat. He's someone who might kill you for that bag of grain. And it's not just individuals. Entire villages start raiding other villages. Small kingdoms start warring with other kingdoms. Not for glory, not for conquest, for food. Historical records show increased conflict during this period. Trade routes collapsed, not just because of the weather, but because traveling meant being vulnerable to bandits and raiders. Cities started hoarding whatever resources they had. Trust evaporated. Let me paint you an even darker picture. You're not just defending against raiders from outside your village. You're defending against people in your village. Your community is turning on itself. The baker who has flour, the farmer who has one cow left, the merchant who has dried fish. They're all targets. And if you're known to have food, you're a target too. So you hide it, you bury it, you stay quiet. You watch your neighbor's children starve and you say nothing. Because saying something, showing compassion, admitting you have food, that gets you killed. That gets your food taken. That gets your family killed. This is the reality of 536 AD. This is what survival actually means. It's not noble. It's not heroic. It's dark. It's brutal. It's horrifying. And here's the thing that should terrify you. This famine lasted for years. Not months. Years. The fog started in 536. Crops failed in 536. Crops failed again in 537. Why? Because even though the fog started to thin slightly, the damage was done. The growing seasons were still disrupted. The temperatures were still wrong. And even if you managed to plant something in 537, you're planting with what seeds? You ate your seeds. You had to. That was food. So now you have nothing to plant, even if conditions improve. This is called a cascading failure. One problem creates the next problem, which creates the next problem, which creates the next problem. It's a death spiral. And once you're in it, it's almost impossible to get out. Chinese records describe people eating tree bark, eating grass, eating things that aren't food, just to fill their stomachs. Records from Europe describe similar desperation. And children? Children die first. They always do. They need more calories relative to their size. They can't go as long without food. Infant mortality, which was already high in the ancient world, became catastrophic. If you had kids in 536 AD, you watched them waste away. You watched them become skeletal. You watched them cry from hunger pains until they were too weak to cry anymore. And then, you watched them die. Could you do that? Could you watch that happen? Could you make the impossible choices required to even have a chance at survival? Most people couldn't. Most people didn't. That's why this period saw a massive population decline. That's why this period is called a collapse. But let's say you're one of the lucky ones. Let's say you made it. You hoarded enough. You defended it successfully. You survived on scraps and desperation. You made it through 536. You made it through 537. You made it through 538. It's now 539, 540, 541. The fog is finally cleared. The sun is back. Temperatures are stabilizing. Crops are starting to grow again, slowly, but growing. You think the nightmare is over. You think you survived the worst year in history. You couldn't be more wrong. It's 541 AD, 5 years after the sun disappeared. You're malnourished, you're weak, but you're alive. Your village, what's left of it, is starting to rebuild. There's hope again. People are smiling again. The harvest this year might actually work. And then, a traveler arrives. He's sick. He's got a fever. He's got these swellings under his arms, in his groin, these huge, painful lumps. He dies 3 days later. Welcome to the Plague of Justinian. Welcome to the final boss of the 536 AD disaster. Welcome to the first bubonic plague pandemic in human history. You know the Black Death, right? The plague that killed a third of Europe in the 1300s? That was the second plague pandemic. This was the first, and it was worse. Here's what happened. The famine created the perfect conditions for plague. How? Let me explain. Rats. Rats carry fleas. Fleas carry Yersinia pestis, the bacteria that causes bubonic plague. Normally, rats stick to their territory. But when there's famine, when food sources collapse, rats migrate. They move into human settlements looking for food, into granaries, into homes, into anywhere humans have stored grain. And those grain shipments, those trade routes that were desperately trying to move what little food existed, they moved the rats too. Rats hiding in grain sacks. Rats in the holds of ships. Rats spreading from port to port to port. The plague started in Egypt, or possibly further south in Africa, and traveled along the grain trade routes to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the most populous city in the Western world. And it hit like a bomb. Procopius, that same historian who described the dark sun, was in Constantinople when the plague arrived. He wrote, "During these times there was a pestilence by which the whole human race came near to being annihilated." The whole human race. Near annihilation. This wasn't hyperbole. This was reality. Let's zoom out. Let's talk about what this did to the world. Because the year 536 AD and the following disasters didn't just kill individuals. It killed empires. It killed civilizations. It changed the entire course of human history. Let's start with the Byzantine Empire. Emperor Justinian had big plans. He was going to reconquer the Western Roman Empire, restore the glory of Rome, reunite the empire. He even had early successes. His general Belisarius reconquered North Africa, Sicily, and parts of Italy. But then 536 happened, then the famine, then the plague, and suddenly, no money, no soldiers, no resources, no hope. The Byzantine Empire never recovered. Justinian's dream of a restored Roman Empire died with the plague victims. The empire survived, sure, but it was a shadow. It was weakened. It was vulnerable. And what moves into vulnerability? Invaders. New powers. New kingdoms. The period following 536 AD is when the Dark Ages really began. And it's not called the Dark Ages because people were stupid or ignorant. It's called the Dark Ages because civilization collapsed, trade collapsed, literacy declined, cities shrank, technology was lost. In Britain, archaeological evidence shows that after the 536 event, entire towns were abandoned. Roman villas, these beautiful advanced structures, were left empty. People moved away from urban centers back to rural subsistence farming. Society regressed. In Scandinavia, the crisis was so severe it entered their mythology. Some historians believe the Norse myth of Fimbulwinter, a great winter that precedes Ragnarok, the end of the world, is actually a cultural memory of 536 AD, a winter so terrible, so world-ending, that it became a myth about the apocalypse. Think about that. The event was so traumatic that 1,000 years later, people were still telling stories about it, still remembering it, still using it as their worst-case scenario for how the world could end. In Mesoamerica, that's modern-day Mexico and Central America, the city of Teotihuacan, one of the largest cities in the world at the time, collapsed. Was it the volcanic winter? We're not 100% certain, but the timing is suspicious. The city burned, the population scattered, a civilization ended. In the Arabian Peninsula, the period of drought and famine contributed to social upheaval that would eventually lead to massive changes. Within a century, Islam would rise and spread rapidly. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the instability from 536 onward created the conditions for new ideologies, new movements, new civilizations to emerge from the ruins of the old. This is what a true catastrophe does. It doesn't just kill people, it changes history. It redirects the entire flow of human civilization. And here's what should terrify you about that. We're not immune. We're not safe. We're not protected from this happening again. In fact, it almost happened again in 1816, the year without a summer, after Mount Tambora erupted. That caused famine across Europe and North America. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein that year while trapped indoors by the endless cold and darkness. That was one volcano. Imagine 3 at once, like 536. And let's talk about Yellowstone for a second. You know Yellowstone National Park? Beautiful geysers, stunning wildlife. Yeah, that's a supervolcano, and it's overdue for an eruption. If it goes off, we're talking 536 AD times 100. We're talking a volcanic winter that could last years. We're talking global crop failure in an era with 8 billion people. 8 billion people, all needing food, all needing warmth, all competing for resources. You think society is stable? You think civilization is secure? One bad eruption, one really bad eruption, and we're back to 536. We're back to fighting our neighbors for a bag of grain. We're back to collapse. And unlike the people in 536, we're softer. We're more dependent. We have no survival skills. We can't farm. Most of us can't even make a fire without matches. We're completely reliant on global supply chains, on grocery stores, on infrastructure. How long would you last if the grocery stores emptied, if the power grid went down, if there was no food for 6 months? A week? 2 weeks? A month? The people in 536 were subsistence farmers. They knew how to grow food. They knew how to preserve food. They knew how to survive hardship. And they barely made it. We wouldn't last a month. This is the lesson of 536 AD. This is the warning from history. We are not in control. Nature is in control. The planet is in control. And when the planet decides to remind us of that fact, we die. Civilizations die. Empires die. And all it takes is one volcano. One really bad day for planet Earth. The survivors. What made the difference in 536 AD? So we've talked about all the ways you'd die, all the ways civilization died, all the horror and suffering and collapse. But here's the thing. Some people survived. Not many, but some. So let's talk about them. Let's talk about what made the difference between life and death. Because maybe, just maybe, there's something we can learn. Survivor Type 1, the hoarder. Remember earlier when I talked about those Scandinavian elites burying gold? They were also hoarding food, and that's what saved them. They had storage. They had large stores of grain, dried fish, preserved meats. They had enough to last years, not months, and they were willing to defend it. They had walls, guards, weapons. They created mini fortresses around their food supplies. Was it moral? No. Did it save them? Yes. The lesson: storage is survival. If you have food stored before the crisis hits, you have options. You have time. You can wait out the worst of it while others are desperately searching for their next meal. Survivor. Type 2. The isolated. Some communities survived because they were remote. Small villages and mountains, islands with fishing access. Places that were already self-sufficient and didn't rely on trade. Places where the plague arrived late, or didn't arrive at all. These people weren't smarter or tougher. They were lucky. They were geographically positioned to avoid the worst of the cascade. When trade routes collapsed, they didn't notice. They were already isolated. The lesson: isolation has advantages. Connection and trade are great during good times. But during collapse, distance from others is protection. Survivor. Type 3. The adapters. Some people survived because they changed. They didn't try to maintain their old lives. They didn't cling to their farms or their homes or their communities. They moved. They migrated. They became nomadic. Historical records show population movements during this period. People abandoning traditional settlements and either moving to more remote areas or to places where they heard conditions were better. Did they know if conditions were actually better? No. But staying meant certain death, so they rolled the dice. The lesson: adaptability beats stubbornness. Your plan is to stay on your farm and defend it? Cool. Until 50 armed raiders show up. Then your plan is to die. The people who survived were the ones willing to abandon everything and start over somewhere else. Survivor. Type 4. The connected. Wait, didn't I just say isolation was good? Yes. But here's the nuance. Some people survived because they were connected to power. They were servants in wealthy households. They were soldiers in armies. They were part of institutions, churches, monasteries, royal courts, that had collective resources. A monastery, for example, had stored food, had multiple members contributing to survival, had walls and defensibility. If you were a monk in 536, your odds were better than if you were a peasant farmer alone on the frontier. The lesson: community matters. But not just any community, organized, resource pooling, defensible community. A loose collection of neighbors, that falls apart. A structured institution with hierarchy and shared resources, that has a chance. Survivor Type 5, the ruthless. And then there were the ones who survived by taking from others: raiders, warlords, people who organized violence and used it to seize resources. They didn't produce food, they took food. They didn't earn survival, they stole survival. Historical records from this period show the rise of strongmen, local warlords filling the power vacuum left by collapsing imperial authority. These weren't noble leaders. They were brutal. They were violent. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. But they survived. And their followers survived. because they had food, even if that food was taken from others. The lesson: in collapse, morality becomes a luxury. The nice guys didn't write the histories because the nice guys died. The ones who wrote the histories, the ones who founded the next generation of kingdoms and dynasties, were often the most ruthless. Now, here's the uncomfortable question. Which type would you be? You want to think you'd be type 4, right? The connected one, part of a functioning community, working together, surviving together. That's the noble answer, the good answer. But statistics say you'd probably be none of these types. You'd probably just be dead. Because most people were dead. The survival rate was abysmal. But let's say you're in the lucky minority. Let's say you do survive. Which type are you? Are you type 1? Can you hoard resources while your neighbor's children starve? Can you say no when they beg? Can you defend your food with violence? Are you type 2? Can you abandon everything and everyone you know? Can you walk away from your home, your community, your life, and strike out into the unknown with no guarantee of finding anything better? Are you type 3? Can you completely reinvent yourself? Give up your identity, your profession, your entire way of life to become something else entirely? Are you type 4? Do you even have access to institutional resources? Are you wealthy enough, connected enough, important enough to be part of the protected class? Are you type 5? Can you take from others? Can you organize violence? Can you become a raider, a warlord, a brigand? Can you look someone in the eye and kill them for their food? Most of us want to think we're heroes. We're good people. We'd help others. We'd maintain our morality. We'd find a way to survive without compromising our values. But 536 AD proves that's a fantasy. The people who maintained their morality, who helped others, who shared their resources, they died. The people who survived made choices that would haunt them forever. And that's the real horror of 536 AD. It's not just that people died. It's that survival required becoming someone you'd hate, someone you never wanted to be. Let's talk about how we know all this. Because you might be thinking, this sounds dramatic, but how do we really know it was that bad? Great question. Let's dive into the evidence. The scientific evidence that proves 536 AD was exactly as catastrophic as I've been describing. Evidence type 1. Ice cores. Scientists drill deep into glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica. These ice cores trap air bubbles from thousands of years ago. They're like time capsules. And when you analyze the chemistry of these air bubbles, you can determine what was in the atmosphere at that time. Ice cores from 536 AD show massive spikes in sulfate particles, volcanic sulfate. This is direct physical evidence of a major volcanic eruption pumping aerosols into the atmosphere. It's not a guess, it's not a theory, it's there, in the ice, measurable, quantifiable. Evidence type 2, tree rings. Trees grow a new ring every year, and the width of that ring tells you about the growing conditions. Warm year with lots of sun and water. Wide ring. Cold year with limited sun. Narrow ring. Tree ring data from all across the northern hemisphere shows 536 AD as having one of the narrowest rings in recorded history. Trees barely grew, and this pattern continues for several years. 536, 537, 538, all narrow rings, all indicating terrible growing conditions. Some trees show frost rings, damage from unseasonable cold. Trees that should have been growing in summer were getting hit by freezing temperatures. This is physical evidence of the climate catastrophe. Evidence type 3, historical documents. We have written records from all over the world describing 536 AD and the years following. And here's what's remarkable. They all describe the same thing. From Rome, Procopius writes about the dark sun. From China, the Beishu Chronicles describe the sun being dim and crops failing. From the Irish Annals, failure of bread. From the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle in Britain, the sun was darkened. These are independent sources, different cultures, different languages, different continents, all saying the same thing. The sun went dark, the cold came, the crops failed. That's not coincidence, that's corroboration, that's proof. Evidence, type 4, archaeological evidence. When you dig into sites from this period, you find evidence of rapid change. Settlements that were thriving suddenly abandoned. Burial practices that changed, often indicating crisis. Mass graves from the plague years. In Scandinavia, archaeologists have found those hoards I mentioned. Wealthy people burying their valuables. And here's the key: they never came back for them. That means they died. They buried their treasure, hoping to retrieve it later, but they never survived to dig it up. That's archaeological evidence of collapse, of death, of catastrophe. Evidence. Type 5. Genetic evidence. Modern DNA analysis can track plague bacteria through history. Scientists have extracted Yersinia pestis DNA from teeth in burial sites from the 6th century. They've sequenced the genome. They've confirmed this was bubonic plague, the same disease that caused the Black Death centuries later. And the distribution of these plague victims matches historical records. Constantinople, Rome, throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East. This wasn't a localized outbreak. This was a pandemic. Evidence type 6. Climate models. When scientists input the volcanic aerosol data into climate models, computer simulations of Earth's climate, the models predict exactly what the historical records describe. Temperature drops, disrupted weather patterns, failed growing seasons. The models confirm the records confirm the models. Science and history align perfectly. So when I tell you 536 AD was the worst year in history, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic. I'm stating a scientifically verified fact. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Scientists have identified the likely volcanoes. There was probably an eruption in Iceland in 536, then another eruption in 540, possibly in the tropics, possibly Krakatoa. That second eruption extended the volcanic winter just as the world was starting to recover. It was a 1-2 punch. Nature hitting humanity twice. Just when people thought the worst was over, boom. Another eruption, more sulfate, more cooling, more crop failures. And that's what made the 536-550 period so uniquely devastating. It wasn't one disaster. It was multiple disasters in rapid succession, each one preventing recovery from the previous one. Evidence type 7. Population data. Here's the smoking gun. Population estimates for the 6th century show a massive decline. We're talking 25–50% of the world's population disappearing within 2 decades. Think about that number. Half of all humans. Gone. That's not a crisis. That's an apocalypse. That's a near-extinction event for human civilization. And we can track this through multiple methods. Fewer settlements, smaller settlements, less agricultural land in use, fewer documents being produced, less trade goods moving around. Every metric points to the same conclusion. The human population crashed. It would take centuries to recover those numbers. Literally centuries. The population of Europe in 800 AD was still lower than it had been in 500 AD. That's 300 years later. That's how devastating the blow was. This is what a true catastrophe looks like. Not in a movie, not in a video game. In reality, this actually happened to real people. Real men, women, children who woke up one morning and the sun was gone, and their entire world fell apart. And the scariest part? It could happen again. The same volcanic mechanisms that caused 536 AD still exist. The same climate vulnerabilities. The same potential for cascade failures. We're not immune. We're not protected. We're just lucky. Lucky that it hasn't happened recently. Lucky that we haven't experienced a volcanic winter in the industrial age. But luck runs out. Eventually, the dice come up wrong. And when they do, we'll find out if we're any better prepared than the people of 536 AD. Spoiler, we're probably not. So let's bring this home. Let's talk about why this matters. Why you should care about something that happened almost 1,500 years ago. Because 536 AD is a warning. It's a message from the past. It's history screaming at us. Pay attention, this can happen again. We live in a world where we think we're safe. We think we're protected. We think technology and civilization have made us immune to the whims of nature. We're wrong. One volcano. That's all it takes. One really bad volcano, and we're back to 536. Back to darkness. Back to cold. Back to starvation. Back to collapse. And we're overdue. Yellowstone, like I mentioned, is a supervolcano that erupts roughly every 600,000 years. The last eruption was 640,000 years ago. We're 40,000 years overdue. Now that doesn't mean it's going to erupt tomorrow, but it will erupt. Eventually. And when it does, 536 AD will look like a practice run. Or maybe it won't be Yellowstone. Maybe it'll be one of the dozens of other active volcanoes around the world. Maybe it'll be 3 at once, like 536. Maybe it'll be something we didn't even predict. The point is, we're vulnerable. Civilization is vulnerable. Everything we've built, everything we rely on, everything we take for granted, it's all balanced on the assumption that nature will cooperate, that the climate will remain stable, that the sun will keep shining, that the harvests will keep coming. But nature doesn't owe us cooperation. The planet doesn't care about our plans. And when the planet decides to flex its power, we're reminded of just how small we are, how weak we are, how dependent we are. The people of 536 AD didn't do anything wrong. They didn't cause the volcanic eruption. They didn't deserve the catastrophe. They were just unlucky. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong century. And we could be just as unlucky tomorrow, next year, next decade. We don't know. We can't know. So what do we do with this information? Do we panic? Do we become preppers, hoarding food in bunkers? Do we give up, assuming survival is impossible anyway? No. We learn, we prepare, we build resilience. We build. We learn from the survivors of 536. We learn that storage matters, that community matters, that adaptability matters, that location matters. We invest in climate science. We monitor volcanoes. We build better food storage systems. We maintain multiple supply chains. We don't put all our eggs in one basket. We remember that we're not invincible. That civilization is a gift, not a guarantee. That everything we have can be taken away by forces beyond our control. And maybe, just maybe, if we remember 536 AD, if we learn its lessons, if we take the warning seriously, maybe we'll be slightly better prepared when the next catastrophe comes. Because it will come. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And 536 AD is a rhyme we should never forget. So the next time you complain about a cloudy day, remember 536. Remember the year the sun disappeared. Remember the year the world froze. Remember the year that civilization collapsed. Remember that you're alive in a time of unprecedented comfort and safety. A time when the sun shines, when food is abundant, when disease is manageable, when society functions. Be grateful for it, because it's fragile, more fragile than you think, and it could all be gone faster than you can imagine. This was 536 AD, the worst year in history, the year that proves we're all just one bad day away from the end of everything we know. Could you survive it? Honestly? No, probably not. Neither could I. Neither could almost anyone. But now you know. Now you understand. Now you've been warned. And maybe that knowledge, that understanding, that's the real survival tool. Not for surviving the next catastrophe, but for appreciating what we have, for building systems that are more resilient, for not taking our current world for granted, because 536 AD happened. It was real. Real people suffered. Real civilizations collapsed. Real children starved. And it could happen again. Don't forget that. Never forget that. The sun could disappear tomorrow, and everything you know could end. That's the lesson of 536 AD. That's the warning from history. That's why it matters. Stay safe out there. Appreciate every sunny day, every meal, every moment of peace and stability, because the people of 536 didn't get those, and neither might we if we're not careful. This has been the story of 536 AD, the worst year to be alive in all of human history, and hopefully, the worst year that will ever be. But we can't count on hope. We have to remember. We have to prepare. We have to learn. Because history doesn't just teach us about the past, it warns us about the future. And 536 AD, that's one hell of a warning. At the plague's peak in Constantinople, 5,000 people were dying per day. 5,000 per day in one city. Imagine that. Imagine the bodies. Imagine the smell. Imagine the horror. They ran out of places to bury the dead. The graveyards were full. So they started using the city's towers. Defensive towers meant to protect the city. They filled them with corpses, stacked bodies floor to ceiling. When those were full, they loaded bodies onto ships and pushed them out to sea. Just pushed them out. Ships full of the dead, drifting in the Mediterranean. The Emperor Justinian himself caught it. The most powerful man in the Western world got the plague. He survived, one of the lucky ones, but his empire never recovered. Here's the truly horrifying statistic. The Plague of Justinian killed approximately 25 to 50 million people over the course of 20 years, at a time when the world's population was only about 200 million. That means the plague killed up to a quarter of all humans on Earth. A quarter, gone, dead, wiped out. And here's your next survival challenge. How do you avoid the plague in 541 AD? You don't know about bacteria. You don't know about fleas. You don't know about rats. You think it's bad air or God's punishment or demonic possession. You have zero understanding of germ theory. Even if you did, what would you do? There are no antibiotics. There's no medicine. If you get the plague, your survival rate is about 40–60%. Coin flip odds. And that's if you have someone to care for you. If you're alone, if everyone else is dead or has abandoned you, your odds are near zero. So your only real strategy is, don't get it. Avoid infected people. But here's the problem. The incubation period for bubonic plague is 2 to 6 days. That means people are walking around contagious before they show symptoms, before they know they're sick. That traveler who came to your village, he infected 5 people before he even felt sick. Those 5 people each infected 5 more before they showed symptoms. That's 25 people. Now 125 people. Now 625 people. This is exponential spread. This is a pandemic. And you have no way to stop it. Your best bet? Total isolation. Leave your village. Leave everyone. Go deep into the forest or mountains with whatever food you have and hide. Become a hermit. Avoid all human contact for how long? Months? Years? But wait. You're already malnourished from the famine. You're already weak. Your immune system is compromised. Even if you avoid human contact, you're vulnerable to other diseases. Pneumonia, influenza, infections from minor cuts. Things that would normally be survivable are now death sentences because your body has nothing left to fight with. This is the brutal math of 541 AD. The famine weakened everyone, and the plague killed the weakened. It was a 1-2 punch that humanity could barely withstand. Let me make this even more real for you. Let's say you're a farmer, 30 years old, living in Gaul, modern-day France. Let's walk through your specific experience. 536. The sun disappears. Your crops fail. You eat your seed grain to survive. Your youngest child, age 2, dies of starvation in winter. 537. You have nothing to plant. You eat tree bark and whatever wild plants you can find. Your father, age 55, dies of malnutrition. 538. You steal grain from a neighboring village's hidden storage. You feel terrible about it, but your remaining 2 children need to eat. Someone from that village tracks you down. There's a fight. You kill him. You're now a murderer, but your kids eat. 539. The weather is improving. You managed to plant a tiny crop using seeds you traded for. You gave up your wedding ring for a handful of barley seeds. It's not much, but it's hope. Your wife smiles for the first time in years. 540. The small crop grows. You harvest it. It's barely enough, but it's enough. You might make it. Your village, what's left of it, celebrates. You went from 200 people to 80 people, but the 80 who remain are survivors. 541. A merchant ship arrives in the nearest port city, 50 miles away. A rat crawls off that ship. A flea bites a dock worker. The dock worker goes to the market. The plague enters your region. 2 weeks later, it reaches your village. Your wife gets it, then your son, then your daughter, then you. Your wife dies first. 3 days of fever and agony. Those lumps, the buboes, they rupture and ooze. The smell is indescribable. She's delirious, doesn't recognize you, dies crying out in pain. Your son dies next. He's only 8 years old. He lasted 4 days. You held him while he died. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't help. You couldn't save him. You just watched. Your daughter survives. So do you. You're the lucky ones. The coin flips went your way. But now you're living in a village where 60 of the remaining 80 people are dead. 20 people left. 20 people to try to maintain fields that once supported 200. And the plague isn't done. It comes back. Not as bad, but it comes back in waves. 542. 543. Again and again. Every few years, another outbreak. More death, more loss, more trauma. This is the reality. This is what survival actually meant. It wasn't an adventure. It wasn't a challenge. It was hell. It was watching everyone you love die. It was becoming someone you never wanted to be. It was making choices that haunt you forever. Could you do it? Could you actually survive this? Be honest. Really think about it. Could you? Let's talk about the domino effect. Because one of the most fascinating and terrifying things about 536 AD is how one event, the volcanic eruption, created a cascade of disasters that each made the next one worse. It wasn't just a volcano. It wasn't just cold. It wasn't just famine. It wasn't just plague. It was all of them, in sequence, each one making the next one more deadly. Let me break down the chain of catastrophe. Domino 1. The eruption. A volcano erupts. Sulfate aerosols enter the stratosphere. This is the trigger. This is the first domino. Domino 2. The climate breaks. The aerosols block sunlight. Temperatures drop. This is just physics. Nothing magical. Just cause and effect. But this domino hits the next one hard. Domino 3. Crops fail. Lower temperatures during growing season mean crops don't develop properly. They don't get enough warmth, enough light, enough energy. They die. This hits the next domino. Domino 4. Food runs out. No harvest means no food. Stored food runs out. People start starving. This hits multiple dominoes at once. Domino 5. Social order collapses. Starving people don't follow rules. They can't. Survival instinct overrides social conditioning. Theft increases. Violence increases. Trust evaporates. Communities fracture. Domino 6. Trade routes collapse. It's too dangerous to travel. Too dangerous to trade. Everyone hoards what they have. This means even regions that might have had some food can't distribute it. Islands of food surrounded by oceans of starvation. Domino 7. Malnutrition weakens. Every 1 year of poor nutrition devastate the human immune system. People aren't just hungry. They're weak, vulnerable. Their bodies have nothing left to fight with. Domino 8. The plague hits. And this is when Yersinia pestis enters the game. The plague bacteria finds a population that's already on the brink. Weakened immune systems, collapsed social order, no medical care, no resources. It's a perfect storm. And the plague thrives. Domino 9. Labor force collapses. So many people die that there aren't enough people left to work the fields. Even when the weather improves, even when crops could grow, there's no one to plant them, no one to tend them, no one to harvest them. Domino 10. Knowledge is lost. Skilled craftspeople die, engineers die, architects die, scholars die, and their knowledge dies with them. Because this is before printing presses, before mass literacy. Knowledge exists in people's heads. When those heads die, the knowledge is gone. Domino 11. Infrastructure crumbles. Roman roads aren't maintained, aqueducts break down, buildings collapse. There's no one to repair them, no resources to repair them. No point in repairing them when there's no one left to use them. Domino 12. Civilization regresses. And this is the final domino. Society doesn't just shrink, it regresses. People forget how to read, forget how to build, forget advanced techniques. They return to simpler, more primitive methods. because that's all they can sustain. This is why 536 AD led to the Dark Ages. This is why it took centuries to recover. Because it wasn't just one disaster. It was a chain reaction, a cascade, a complete systemic failure. And here's the thing, this chain could happen again, right now, today, tomorrow. A big enough volcanic eruption, domino one falls, and then the rest start falling, one by one, faster and faster, until everything is down. We have more technology now, sure. We have better agriculture, better medicine, better infrastructure, but we also have more people, more interdependence, more complexity. And complex systems? They're fragile. They have more points of failure. Imagine this cascade happening to our modern world. One eruption. Power grids fail from the cold. Heating systems shut down. People freeze. Food production collapses. Not just local farms, industrial agriculture, the kind that feeds billions, gone. Supply chains break within days. Grocery stores empty within a week. Panic sets in. Riots, looting, martial law. But there's not enough food to distribute, so martial law just means organized starvation instead of chaotic starvation. Hospitals overflow. Not with plague, not yet, but with malnutrition, hypothermia, injuries from violence. Medical supplies run out. Doctors and nurses start dying. And then disease hits. Could be plague, could be flu, could be anything. Doesn't matter. A weakened population facing a pandemic without functioning hospitals, without medicine, without food. Death rate goes exponential. Government collapses. Not because leaders are bad, but because there's nothing they can do. You can't govern people who are starving. You can't maintain order when there's no food to distribute. The internet goes down. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Server farms need power. Technicians need food. Infrastructure needs maintenance. None of that happens during collapse. And suddenly, we're back in the Dark Ages. We're back to subsistence survival. We're back to 536 AD, except worse. Because we don't have the skills they had. We don't have the resilience they had. They knew how to farm without machines, how to hunt without guns, how to preserve food without refrigeration, how to build without power tools, how to navigate without GPS, how to survive without modern medicine. Do you? Does anyone you know? This is the vulnerability of modern civilization. We're standing on top of a tower, a really tall, really impressive tower made of technology and infrastructure and global cooperation. But it's a tower balanced on dominoes. And if the wrong domino falls, the whole thing comes down, and we fall with it. All right. We've gone through all of it. The volcanic winter, the famine, the social collapse, the plague, the complete disintegration of civilization as they knew it. We've looked at the science. We've looked at the history. We've looked at the survival strategies. Now comes the final question. Could you survive? Let's be brutally honest. Let's break down your actual chances. Phase 1. The first 6 months. March, August, 536. This is the volcanic winter phase. The sun is dark. Temperatures are dropping. Crops are failing. Your modern knowledge gives you almost nothing. You know it's a volcanic eruption. Great. That doesn't help you. You can't stop it. You can't make the sun come back. All you can do is realize that food is about to become scarce. If you're smart, you immediately start hoarding. You take every resource you can get your hands on. Food, seeds, tools. You prepare for winter in the middle of summer. Your neighbors think you're crazy, until they're starving and you're not. Your survival chance in phase 1, 70%. Most people survive the first 6 months. You're not starving yet. You're uncomfortable, worried, scared, but alive. Phase 2, the first famine, September 536 to summer 537. No harvest. Food stores are running out. This is where people start dying. Children first, then the elderly, then the weak. You need to have prepared in phase 1. If you didn't, you're dead. If you were too generous, you're dead. If you couldn't defend your supplies, you're dead. Your survival chance in phase 2, 45%. More than half of people die. Starvation is slow and horrible. You watch yourself waste away. You're exhausted, you're cold, you're desperate. Phase 3, the second year, 537 to 538. Another failed harvest. The fog is still there. The cold continues. Anyone who barely made it through year 1 dies in year 2. Only the most prepared, most ruthless, most lucky survive. Your survival chance in phase 3, 25%. 3/4 of the original population is gone. You're living in a ghost town. Bodies everywhere, abandoned homes, silence. Phase 4, the plague arrives, 541 to 545. You survived the famine, you beat the odds. You're one of the tough ones. And then the plague comes. And it doesn't care how tough you are. It doesn't care how much food you stored. It's a bacteria. It's biology. It's luck. Even if you isolate, even if you avoid contact, the plague is so widespread that your odds are basically a coin flip. You either get it or you don't. You either survive it or you don't. Your survival chance in phase 4, 12%. Only about 1 in 8 people who were alive in 536 are still alive in 545. Final calculation, your overall survival chance. If you multiply those probabilities, 70%, x 45%, x 25%, x 12%, 0.945%, less than 1%, less than 1% chance of survival. Those are your odds. Those are your actual odds of making it through the 536 AD event. And that's assuming you're an adult in relatively good health to start with. If you're a child, odds are worse. If you're elderly, worse. If you have any chronic health conditions, worse. But let's say you're the lucky one. Let's say you're the 1 in 100 who makes it. Let's say you survive. What have you become? You've watched your children die. You've stolen food from your neighbors. You've maybe killed someone to defend your supplies. You've abandoned friends. You've made decisions that you can never undo, that you can never forget. You're alive, but you're traumatized. You're broken. You're haunted by the faces of everyone you couldn't save, everyone you chose not to save, everyone you had to sacrifice so you could live. Is that survival? Is that winning? Is that... The survivors of 536 AD didn't get a trophy. They didn't get a medal. They got to live with the memories. They got to live in a world that was shattered. They got to try to rebuild from ashes. And that's the real answer to, could you survive 536 AD? Physically, probably not. The odds say no. The math says no. The history says no. But even if you did survive physically, could you survive mentally? Could you live with what you'd have to do? Could you look at yourself in the mirror, if mirrors even existed anymore, and recognize the person looking back? This is why 536 AD is the worst year in history. It's not just that people died, it's that survival required destroying your own humanity. It required becoming someone else, someone harder, someone crueler, someone you never wanted to be. Modern parallels. And here's what keeps me up at night. We're more vulnerable now, not less. More. In 536 AD, 90% of people were farmers. They knew how to grow food, they knew how to preserve food, they knew survival skills, and 87% of them still died. Today, maybe 2% of people are farmers. The rest of us, we're office workers, we're software engineers, we're teachers and lawyers and accountants. We know how to do our specialized jobs. We don't know how to grow food. We don't know how to hunt. We don't know how to survive without grocery stores and supply chains. A volcanic winter today would be worse than 536 AD because we're more dependent, more specialized, more fragile. Our global population is 40 times larger than it was in 536. That means 40 times more people competing for limited resources. That means chaos on a scale we can't even imagine. Our food system is optimized for efficiency, not resilience. We have just-in-time supply chains. We have 3 days of food in most cities. 3 days. After that, the stores are empty. After that, panic, riots, collapse. Could you survive that? Could anyone?